that book actually kind of had a renaissance back in 2016 when Hillbilly Elegy came out.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure you remember this, which it's kind of weird to think that it's now the vice president-elect of the United States. It's kind of wild, honestly, to think about. But J.D. Vance's book, Hillbilly Elegy, I think was really important for a lot of American elites who were like, how do these people support Trump? Where does this shit come from? That they're really, I mean, that if you really think back to that time, it was shocking to the elite character that any person in the world could ever vote for Donald Trump, and not just vote, he won the election. How does that happen? And that's Hillbilly Elegy guided people in an understanding of what that's like on a lived day-to-day basis. And JD, to his credit, talks about Scots-Irish heritage, about Appalachia, and the legacy of what that culture looks like today, and how a lot of these people voted for Donald Trump. But we got to give credit to Jim Webb, who wrote the history of these people and taught me and you about, you know, their original fight against the oppressors in Scotland and in Ireland, and their militant spirit, and how they were able to bring that over here. And, you know, they got their due in Andrew Jackson and some of our other populist presidents who set us up on the road to Donald Trump to where we are today.
Dude, it got me pumped, excited to be an American.
Me too. I love that book.
It's crazy that JD, the same guy, because that's Hillbilly Elegy is what I kind of thought of him as.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you, for me, it's actually pretty surreal. I met J.D. Vance in like 2017. I didn't in like a bar. I didn't ever think he would be the vice president-elect of the United States. I mean, just kind of wild. One of my friends went back and dug up the email that we originally sent him, just like, hey, do you want to meet up? And he was like, sure, you know. Okay, yeah. And I was watching on television. I mean, the first time that it really hit me, I was like, whoa. It was like naming a history book, is whenever he became the vice presidential nominee. I was watching him on TV, and the confetti was falling, and he was waving with his wife, and I was like, wow, like that's it. You're in the history books now forever, especially now as the literal vice president-elect of the U.S. But his own evolution is actually a fascinating story for us too, because I think a lot of the time I've spent right now is kind of a lot of what I'm giving right now are like 2016 kind of takes about like why Trump won that time. But we should spend a lot of time on how Donald Trump won this election, and like how what happened, some of the failures of the Biden administration, some of the payback for the Great Awakening. But also, if you look at the evolution of J.D. Vance, this is a person who wrote Hillbilly Elegy, and not a lot of people pay attention to this, but if you read Hillbilly Elegy, J.D. was much more of a traditional conservative at that time. He was citing, I think the famous passage is about like payday loans and why they're good or something like that. I don't know his position today, but I would assume that he's probably changed that. But the point is that his ideological evolution from watching somebody who really was more of a traditional Republican with a deep empathy for the white working class, then eventually become a champion and a disciple of Donald Trump, and to believe that he himself was the vehicle for accomplishing and bettering the United States, but specifically for working class Americans, really, of all stripes. And that story is really one of the rise of the modern left as it exists as a political project, as an ideology. It's also one of the Republican Party, which coalesced now with Donald Trump as a legitimate figure and as the single bulwark against cultural leftism and elitism that eventually was normalized to the point that majority of Americans decided to vote for him in 2024.